Welcome to the third session of CROMasterminds, a webinar series by Zoho PageSense, a conversion optimization platform from the Zoho suite of applications. This series is designed to bring conversion optimization experts from across the globe to interact with you. So do you ever feel you're doing everything right on your website, but it's just not working to your advantage? Well, stay with us to find how you can turn the situation around. So my name is Vaijayanti. I head marketing for Zoho PageSense. I have with me today Teresa Farr, a CRO and UX specialist at ConversionMax. Teresa has been specializing in helping mid-sized businesses increase online revenues with conversion optimization at ConversionMax for over 12 years. She also speaks, teaches, and blogs about conversion optimization. She's been featured in the Wall Street Journal, Fox Business, the Denver Business Journal, and is often in Marketing Day as well. Teresa has a master's degree in marketing from the University of Colorado and a master's certification in conversion optimization from Market Motive.
Thank you, Vajan. You may not know this, but marketers have to be a bit like detectives and look for clues on how to increase our website sales and revenues. I actually did not perfect my detective skills in grad school or even working on the job. It was when I became a mom. These are my two boys. Oliver is 6.5 and Simon Thomas will be 2 in September. Now picture this. One morning, it was 6 a.m., must have been winter because it was dark outside, it was cold, and I'm stumbling to the kitchen with one thing on my mind, just to get that first cup of coffee. And I saw something that immediately got my attention. The freezer door had been left wide open. Instinctively, I headed towards the person who is most likely to know something about this. And as I headed towards Oliver's room, I'm walking down the hallway and I see a lid that had been discarded on the floor. So I picked up my pace. And as I approached Oliver's closed door, I put my hand on the doorknob. It was sticky. It smelled sweet. I opened the door, walked in, and Oliver has this great bed. It's raised up a couple of feet, makes room for a storage, dressers, stuff like that. But most importantly, for a little kid, there's a secret hiding space. So I head over, lift up the blankets, bend down, and there I see my sweet, innocent little Oliver with one hand around the ice cream tub, the other one holding a big serving spoon. He's got ice cream all over his face and his hands. If you are a parent, whether of a human or of a fur baby, or if you've just spent any time around children or animals, you are familiar with that moment. I'm talking about the moment when you walk into a room and you see that something has gone wrong. It takes you about 2.5 seconds to figure out what happened, and most importantly, who needs a talking to. The good news is that as marketers, we have already these detective skills. As human beings, we have these detective skills. As marketers, we just need to tap into them. So today, I'm going to talk to you about how to harness your inner detective and look for clues and use them on the most important aspects of your website. That is your site's visitors, its data, and its evolution. Now, the reason I care so much about this was in 2008, I had a client who offered vacation lodging in Breckenridge, Colorado. And at the time, my husband and I were doing traffic. So he hired us to mostly do SEO and a little bit of pay-per-click on his site. And we worked with him for several years. And the data showed that we were bringing in more traffic. It was better qualified. There were fewer people looking for discounted vacation lodging. They knew this was a luxury and they were willing to spend money for it. And despite our success with traffic, though, his revenues were tanking. And this was bad. 2008 was the start of that recession. So people were cutting back on vacations. He had a lot of people who were depending on him. He had a whole staff of office workers. He had a maintenance crew. He had a cleaning crew. not to mention the homeowners who were threatening, hey, if you can't fill my home, I've got to list it somewhere else. So although our job was to drive traffic to the site, we decided to conduct a usability and conversion audit, and what we found changed everything for us. We found major usability and conversion problems on the site. The biggest was the booking engine. When you go to actually make a reservation for some lodging, half the time you accidentally canceled the order, got kicked out. There were just a ton of problems with the site. So this was a big aha moment for my husband and me. It's like, why are we putting all these resources, all this effort into driving traffic to a site that's not going to convert? And what we discovered was that a lot of this guy's customers ended up having to pick up the phone and complete their reservations on the phone. When we brought this to his attention, he did not want to hear it. Poor guy. He had spent tens of thousands of dollars on this website. And his argument was, this website used to make me a lot of money. I haven't changed anything. Why isn't it still making me a lot of money? Turns out that was precisely the problem. You see, in the beginning, he didn't have a ton of competitors, and they weren't all that sophisticated either. So his buyers were very motivated to figure out how to book their lodging, and that's why they would pick up the phone. But over time, his competitors stepped up their game, so he was losing market share. His response to us was, well, just get me more traffic to make up for it. But he was focusing on the wrong problem. And I don't tell you this story to belittle the guy. He was a great guy. He was a smart businessman. He just had a lot on his plate, as we all do. Since you're on this webinar, I imagine you have to have a good handle on all these different aspects of marketing. And I imagine that you are, in fact, quite good at a lot of these things: SEO, web design, CRO, advertising, analytics. But do you ever feel like, despite your best efforts, your site isn't making as much money as you just know it could be? Maybe conversion rates are low, maybe your cart abandonment rates are high, or you're losing share to competitors like my client was, or your ROI on advertising isn't as good as you'd like it to be. Raise your hand if you can relate, if any of this is familiar. Or if you're checking out your competitors and you get stressed out because they're just killing it maybe on Instagram or Pinterest, and you're thinking, oh, I just can't take on one more thing. Vaijanti, is our audience relating to these problems? Are they raising their hands here saying, yes, this happens to me? Let's see, Vaijanti, I can't hear you if you're talking, but
Yes, they are raising their hands. There are a couple of hands raised.
Okay, most people do. There's so much on our plates that, you know, it's hard to, we feel pulled in different directions. So today I'm going to introduce a formula to help you prioritize your resources. And I want you to think about this formula anytime you start to get pulled in a new direction, or your boss says, hey, there's something new and I want you to put all your resources into this, and you start to feel stressed out and overwhelmed. There are 3 factors that determine how your site makes money, and you need to multiply these together. It's your traffic times your conversion rate times the value of a conversion. If any of these is a 0, you're not making money. So let's look at what each of these areas entails. Your traffic could be earned through SEO or social media, or you could pay for it. Your conversion rate is a systematic process of doing that detective work to actively look for the problems on your site by gathering qualitative and quantitative data, and then fixing those problems with your testing and ESR, which I'll talk about a little bit later, but that stands for Evolutionary Site Redesign. Now, these first 2 factors in the formula, your traffic and your conversion, have to work together. If you're only focusing on traffic, like my client was, it's like you're being a detective and you've done all your investigation. You have all the clues. You know who the criminal is, and you just walk away from the case. So you have to drive the traffic to the site, and then, of course, you have to convert it. And that's why you're here today, obviously. on this webinar. But that brings us to the third part of the formula. What you're measuring as a conversion has to be something that puts money in the bank. So I'm not talking about likes or followers. I'm talking about your primary conversion goals. If you're e-commerce, it's your average order value. So you're working on your cross-sells, your upsells, your repeat purchases. If you're lead gen, then it's the value of a lead. So again, it's your cross-sells, upsells, repeat purchases. So my specialty is this middle part here, obviously, converting your site's traffic. And this is what I'm going to talk to you about today. And my client, that ski vacation client, was so concerned with this one little box over here in the corner, SEO, that he was neglecting the whole rest of this entire formula on how his site makes money. And that's why I care so much about converting your website's traffic. And this is important now more than ever. I mean, so many businesses now having to limit their personal interaction are relying more and more on their website and their website sales. And even if maybe your business has come through this time relatively unscathed, your competitors might not be. And that could actually pose a problem for you, because let's say now they're increasing their online presence and they might not know what they're doing. Let's say they're just plowing a bunch of money into AdWords and they are just using Google's default settings and they don't really know what they're doing with their bids. They're just jacking up the prices of cost per click. That's bad for you. So now more than ever, you need to out-convert rather than outspend your competitor. So where I'm specifically going to focus on within this area, this formula, is right here. Doing your detective work to gather qualitative and quantitative data in order to identify and prioritize the biggest problems on your site so you can fix them. And I'm going to repeat that phrase multiple times today because that's the one takeaway that I want you, if nothing else, to take away from this. So I'm going to repeat that right now. Again, you have to do your detective work, gather the qualitative and quantitative data in order to identify and prioritize the biggest problems on your site so you can fix them. But before I do, you are on this webinar today because you've already been doing a lot. You're good at your job, at marketing, but something isn't working or something needs improvement. And so I want to make sure that you're not making these very, very common mistakes that could be something that you need to address right away. So one thing that I hear a lot is people will say, well, will you just take a quick look at my site? Let me know what I need to fix real fast, where I'll make a whole lot of money. Well, I could just rattle off a whole bunch of best practices, but you really don't need to hire me to tell you best practices. If you do a Google search, you will literally find millions of results of best practices. And most importantly, sometimes best practices fail. So I want to do a little poll here and have you all vote. So I have two variations of a page. Dell, the computer company, was following the best practice of removing navigation in their shopping cart. We all know that when we're trying to push people towards a goal, we don't want to distract them. So the variation A has no top navigation. Variation B does have that top navigation. So quick poll, just answer, do you think variation A was the winner with no navigation, or is variation B the winner with the navigation? And Vajanti, let me know.
We have 50% for A and 50. Okay, now it's changing. It's 41 for variation A and 43 for variation B. It's 46 and 53 now.
46 and 53.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, and which one? Which one is 53?
Variation B.
Variation B. Okay. Probably because I set you up for that, right? You're right. The people who said variation B. The best practice would be to remove it, but for whatever reason, having that navigation in there was the winning variation. Let's do another one.
Yeah.
Best practice is to have trust symbols, right? So variation A has the trust symbol on the form. Variation B doesn't. So again, answer for us if you think variation A was the winner or variation B was the winner.
Okay, the poll is on now. Okay, maximum votes for variation A. So it's at 93% for variation A and 6% for variation B.
Yep. And that's what you would think. We think we need trust symbols, but for whatever reason, again, the best practice was the losing variation. One last poll, the secure shopping icon right by the call to action. And notice too, the wording on the call to action changed a little bit. So vote again if you think variation A or variation B was the winner.
Okay, the poll is on now.
The best practice says yes, we want to know that our credit card will be kept safe.
Okay, so variation A has 46%. Okay, it's 50-50 now. Variation A is 50%.
Great, thank you, Vajanti. Thank you. And this one, yes, the best practice did win. So we're left confused, right? Do I follow the best practices? Do I not? When do I not? And the problem is you cannot just blindly follow best practices. Each and every one of you has to do your detective work. Gather that qualitative and quantitative data. Use that to identify and prioritize the biggest problems on your website so you can fix them. Because on the road to success, there are no shortcuts. All right, so no more quick fixes. The next common mistake that I hear is people are really kind of obsessed with getting that cheap traffic, right? Or the free traffic. They have huge budgets on their SEO department in order to get free traffic. That's an oxymoron, all the money they're spending on free traffic. There's what I'm going to do is at the end, go back to that formula, traffic times conversion rate times the value of a conversion. I'm going to plug some numbers in there to demonstrate how if you actually make the traffic that you have worth more and make that more valuable, you're going to end up making more money sooner rather than chasing all of this free, cheap traffic. Okay, and then the last, before I introduce the last common mistake, we're going to do another poll. And I want to know how often most of you wait until you launch a new version of your website. Do you do it every 1 to 2 years? Do you do 2 to 5 years and you do a new version of your website, or is it more than 5 years? So if you see the poll, go ahead and answer. Are we getting some answers, Vajanti?
So we have 21% for 0 to 2 and 50% for the second option and 28% for the third, over 5 years.
Okay, so most of you are kind of in the middle, 2 to 5 years, which is where most businesses are. This was a little bit of a trick question, to be honest, because this whole process of waiting so many years, launching a completely brand new, doing a total overhaul of a website, and then doing nothing for several years, and then a complete overhaul every so many years, that process no longer works. And I'm going to show you some examples of massive failures, even from big brands. You may have actually heard the story of Finish Line, the shoe company. This was their website, and they hired a very expensive, very reputable agency to launch a new version of their website. I think there's a little bit of a delay. Can you, okay, I think it just popped up. So this was their website. And then when they hired the new agency, this was the new version. You want to know what month they launched this? It was November. November, the biggest shopping season of the year. They launched this. I don't even know what this site sells anymore. And the result? Finish Line loses $3 million in sale with its new website. That led to Finish Line's top web exec resigns. You don't want to be that guy. Nobody wants to be that guy. But Finish Line isn't the only one. Marks and Spencer, again, same story. Hired a very expensive, very reputable. So it was a very long process to get this new website. And the result, online sales fall 8% in 3 months. Yahoo, mail fail, redesign and outages have consumers running. Dig, redesigns, loses more than a quarter of an audience. Again and again, we see the same story where companies do massive overhauls and lose a lot of sales or marketing. Again, I think we have a little bit of a delay. Okay. And the reason why is when you do a massive overhaul, some of the changes that you make will improve conversion rates. But some of those changes will actually hurt conversion rates. And when you make all the changes at the same time, you don't know what helped and what hurt. So if we think of the best sites in our industry, and this green line represents the ones that we're always kind of checking out and, let's be honest, copying when we launch a new version of our website, we kind of maybe almost catch up to them. And then we take a couple of years where we don't do anything. We're not staying flat and plateauing. Like my ski vacation client, if our competitors are getting better, we are losing market share. Or even worse, like Finish Line, you launch a new version of your website, sales tank, and so then you have to throw the old website back up. Could you imagine? I mean, think about how much hard work and money and time and stress goes into launching a new version of your website. Could you imagine the pain of having to take it down and just put the old one back up? That makes my stomach hurt just thinking about that. So no more launching a new version of your website every so many years. There is an exception. If you haven't changed your site in like 15 years and it looks something like this, yeah, we're going to go ahead and start from scratch on that one. But in general, we're not going to make these 3 mistakes. What we're going to do instead is focus on what matters. So if I've lost you, I've just spent a lot of time talking about problems, introducing this formula. If you have other tabs open, your phone open, close everything down. Now we're getting to the solutions, what you actually need to do, the actionable work for you. You need to focus on these 3 things, starting with your site's visitors. I would argue this is the most important, yet the most underrated site aspect of conversion rate optimization. You've got to strive to understand your site's visitors first and foremost. Next, you have to do your detective work. Gather the qualitative and quantitative data in order to identify and prioritize the biggest problems on your site so you can fix them. I'm going to show you how to do all of this. And lastly, we then don't do massive overhauls of our site anymore. We use our findings from the tests, and we are constantly evolving and improving our websites. So let's dig into each one of these. Visitors, understanding your site's visitors. Let's agree as a marketing community to stop thinking about traffic. Let's recognize that there is a person out there who has a problem. We just need to explain how we are the solution. So I want to introduce a framework to help you organize your content and to convey that in an effective manner. When we're online as consumers, we all make our decisions either quickly or slowly. So you see on the top on the left, we see fast versus slow. So the top row, competitive and spontaneous buyer types make their decisions quickly. The bottom 2 boxes, people make their decisions slowly. On the left, these people make their decisions based on logic. And on the right, these people make their decisions based on emotion. We generally fall into one of these 4 boxes as consumers. It can vary a little bit depending on what we're buying, what we're shopping for, if it's a high ticket item or something like that. But in general, we all fall into one of these 4 boxes. As marketers, we need to make sure that especially our landing pages are appealing to this top row first. We need to convey what we do and why somebody should choose us within the first few seconds of somebody coming to our website. If we don't, these fast decision makers just bounce. They're not going to scroll. They're not going to click down to find what they're looking for. So we need to, and it's mostly in these 4 places, your headline, your subheadline, your tagline or logo area, or your hero shot. So again, headline, subheadline, tagline/logo, or hero shot. Make sure you convey what you do and why they should choose you over any other option. Now the bottom row these people will scroll down the page. They will click to other pages until they find what they're looking for. So the methodical buyer type wants to read all the fine print and have a thorough understanding of how the process works. So make sure somewhere on your site you're explaining that. And then the humanistic is interested in people. They're the ones who go to your About Us page, and they don't want to see the exterior of your building and your mission statement. They want to see people. They want to know your company's history and its story, why it was founded. They also read your testimonials, and they want to hear from people who they can relate to, people similar to them. So let's take a look at a landing page and see how well it appeals to these 4 buyer types, starting with the competitive buyer type who wants to know what you do. So this is a laundry service, and when the competitive buyer type is looking for what they do, they see that answer here in the subheadline. We pick up, clean, and deliver direct to your doorstep. The spontaneous buyer type wants to know why they should choose you. It says here, your laundry and dry cleaning done with the click of a button. That's unique, right? That's a nice, unique value proposition that most laundry services don't do. The methodical buyer wants to know how it works. So it even says here, how does it work? They scroll down, there's a nice 4-step process. So that's wonderful. However, as you scroll down, there's nothing that appeals to the humanistic buyer type, unfortunately. Nothing about the people who work at the company, the founders, no testimonials. So that's an area for improvement. But you know what? For a very clean landing page, they do an excellent job of appealing to 3 out of 4 buyer types. So this framework helps us to organize our content. What messages do we put in what order on the page? But it's really just scratching the surface. Because the truth is, my customers are different from yours, right? And so we each need to dig into who our customers are. So I recommend this book, The User is Always Right. It's an oldie but goodie on really understanding our customers and finding out what their problems are and how we can address their individual needs. So that answers number 1, right? Focusing on your site's visitors. So let's get to number 2. How do we do this detective work to gather the qualitative and quantitative data to identify and prioritize the biggest problems so we can solve them? When you do this, you are going to come up with a whole list of problems that you never knew existed on your website. And it can be very eye-opening and alarming sometimes to see all these problems that are new. And you will probably find yourself in a meeting, something like this, where people say, well, when I'm online, I never fill out the form. I always pick up the phone and call. And somebody else says, I think blue is a very powerful color. Let's make our background blue. And someone else says, when I'm online, I always go to the About Us page. Let's put our resources into better photography for our About Us page. And someone says, in my opinion, our product pages need work. So let's put our photography dollars over there. And when this happens, all these opinions are thrown around. Whose opinion gets implemented? You may have heard of the HIPPO, the highest paid person's opinion. At some point, the highest paid person in the room says, enough bickering. When I'm online, I find that I want to chat. So we're going to put all of our resources into a better chat box. And that's what we're doing. And everybody in the room says, yes, boss. And that's what happens. I don't want you making decisions based on anyone's opinion anymore. We're going to use data. And we're going to start with analytics. Analytics, as you know, tells you what's going on. What are the problems on the site? What does the data tell us? But it doesn't tell you why. I mean, as you know, a typical shopping cart page, right? We see at the top, 30% of the people are going from one step to the next. And after that, we have 70% of the people. And then after that, 90% of the people are making their way down. So this helps us to prioritize. Okay, it's the top of the funnel here that needs the work. That's where we're going to put our efforts. But this doesn't tell us why this first step in the shopping cart is so bad. We need qualitative data for that. And it's not just Google Analytics. There's lots of analytics that you can and should have on your site. If your primary call to action is to get people to fill out the form, you should have form analytics. You'll be looking at the individual questions in your form that offend or confuse or annoy your users and where they are abandoning. but form analytics doesn't tell you why those fields are problematic. If your primary call to action is a phone call, you need call tracking, right? You need to know what's driving the phone calls and what isn't. But again, this won't tell you why certain issues are driving phone calls. So that takes us to our qualitative data and doing your detective work. And the first place that I like to look and use is user testing. And sometimes, to be honest, qualitative data is all you've got. A lot of times when we think of conversion rate optimization, we think of testing, running tests, A/B tests, and having statistical significance. But sometimes you can't do that. Maybe you have a new segment or a small traffic segment that's just like a small ad group, or maybe it's a little underperforming group, or for whatever reason, it's not appropriate to A/B test. Maybe it's a goal that can't even be quantified, right? And so you can't run A/B tests, and you have to rely on your qualitative data. So I'll give you an example. This was a client of mine in the travel space, and this was their homepage. And when I did some user testing on it, I found some problems that were identified specifically in their headline. Were you all able to see the whole homepage? Okay, so that's the homepage. So zooming in here just on the headline and subheadline, users were a little bit, I wouldn't say upset, but a little bit jarred by the very first word. We're used to seeing that as an adjective, perfect. And they're using it here as a verb, perfect your dream vacation. It's not horrible. It wasn't causing people to abandon or bounce right away, but it's just one of those little things where you're expecting your users to change their mind shift just a little bit, like, oh, it's not perfect, it's perfect. And then user testing showed the subheadline too, travel to the four corners of the world without going around in circles. All right, that's cute. It tells me that they will help, I guess, make my travel planning easier. But that's not really a unique value proposition. That spontaneous buyer wants to know what makes them different. I mean, how many travel sites claim to make your travel planning easier? So what's different about them? So we did some brainstorming and we came up with this variation. Let's get rid of the perfect and just say your dream vacation, customized by specialists who know what the guidebooks don't. So now it's more clear that you're going to have experts with insider knowledge customizing your vacation. So we measured this by running a poll off-site, got 100 respondents in their demographic, and asked them about 4 or 5 questions, make sure to test their understanding and their preference. And sure enough, the new headline-subheadline combo was preferred 3 times more than the old one. So sometimes you've just got to go with your qualitative data. There was no way to really A/B test that. The second method that I love for qualitative data is to run a 5-second test. So here's a client of mine from a long time ago, this was actually 2012, that provided secure data hosting. So like banks need to store customer data in a PCI compliant hosting environment, and like hospitals need a HIPAA compliant environment. And this is what they sold or offered, and this was their homepage. So I took this screenshot and I ran it through a 5-second test. That means random anonymous people in their demographic saw this screenshot for 5 seconds and then it disappeared. And then they answered my questions, just again, 4 or 5 questions. And the first question is always, what do you think this company sells? Well, based on the tag cloud, you can see most people got it right. However, 25% of the people were way off base. I never just stop at the tag cloud. I always export the raw data and I categorize it and chart it and analyze it, and found that 25% of the people thought this company offered something having to do with education. Way off base. So we looked at it and said, well, why would they answer that? And we thought, well, maybe this check mark looks a bit like a book. And maybe this woman looks like either a teacher or, a student. I don't know. The headline and tagline complying to the higher standard maybe seems a bit like higher education. I don't know. Again, we have some clues and we're trying to put it together to tell the story and figure out what the problems could be. So we came up with a variation where we got rid of some of those aspects that we thought kind of hinted at education, ran an A/B test on bounce rate, and sure enough, got a 25% improvement. So that's great. I mean, as CRO people, we love when our tests win and it validates our assumptions and we're super proud of ourselves. But even in 2012, I was not super proud of this new variation of the homepage. I mean, we did implement it. It was the winning variation with fewer bounces, and so that became the new homepage. But I've certainly worked on better homepages. So we went back, right? We gathered more data and figured out what else could be causing problems, came up with a new variation, ran a new A/B test, and sure enough, got an additional 20% improvement. So this is what I'm talking about with constantly evolving our sites. We didn't do a massive overhaul. This was not a site-wide change. We're finding individual problems and we're ticking them off one by one by one, and we're just evolving and improving our site over time. But even though we were super excited about an additional winning test, we had to hold ourselves in check a little bit because this is just the home page and we were just testing bounce rates. That's not really where they make their money. Where they make their money is on their form. They need people to fill out the form. These leads go to the sales team. It's a very long sales cycle, but as you can imagine, if they get MasterCard or somebody to sign up, that's worth a lot of money to them. So we had to analyze this form page. And I started with predictive eye tracking. So this has nothing to do with where actual users are moving their mouse or interacting with the page. It's just telling us what is drawing visual attention on the page. And you can see that a lot of attention is being given to the very top, the blue banner, which really doesn't do much to help people fill out the form or convince them to do that. If you want people to fill out the form, you think maybe that should draw the eye a little bit more. So this was another hint, a clue of maybe we should get rid of this blue banner and get people to the form a little bit faster. But I wanted to analyze how their actual users were interacting with the form page. So that takes us to user behavior. This was not even form analytics. I mean, this was just a simple heat map, and it still gave us so much insight. What you could see, this blue line represents the fold. You could see that their users were scrolling down. They were skipping entering their personal information. For whatever reason, they were jumping to what they wanted to get off their chest. I need cloud computing. This is my budget. These are my questions or comments or whatever. So that's another clue, right? Telling us what we might want to change, what we want to test changing on this page. So we came up with a new variation that got rid of the blue banner across the top. We asked the questions in the order that people wanted to answer them. Instead of asking for their contact information, we asked them to check off what they needed, all those questions that they wanted to answer. We added the trust symbols along the right, the social proof along the bottom, ran an A/B test of the original versus the variation, and the blue line again represents where the fold is. And sure enough, we got a 71% improvement. 71% more people filling out the form. Almost 71% more leads going to the sales team. Now, a lot of people think conversion rate optimization is, again, following best practices, just testing button colors. But we would not have gotten a 71% improvement if we had just tested an orange button against the green button. We had to do that detective work. We had to find what the actual problems were on the site through the qualitative data that we gathered. So that takes us to the last part here, our site's evolution. So again, instead of doing a massive overhaul and waiting 3, 4, 5 years and doing another massive overhaul to copy the best sites in the industry, we were attacking each problem one by one and using that to evolve the site. And if you do that, you're hanging right up there or even doing better than the best sites that are in your industry because you're constantly moving forward. Okay, so to wrap this up, I told you that I would plug some numbers into this formula and demonstrate how you're going to make more money, and you're going to do it sooner if you focus on making the traffic that you already have more valuable. So let's plug some numbers right in here. Let's have a site with easy math that says it gets 100,000 visitors a month with a 2% conversion rate, and the value of a conversion is $50. Multiply that through, this site brings in 100 grand a month in revenue. So using everything that I just showed you, I think it's realistic to take this 2% conversion rate and bump it up to say 4%. That's pretty conservative. That means that out of 96 out of every 100 visitors coming to your site are still not converting. However, when you plug that into the bottom line, here, you take that 100 grand a month in revenue up to 200 grand a month in revenue. You just brought in an extra 100 grand a month in revenue every single month. What would you do with that? You could give your conversion person a bonus, hint, hint, or treat your team. You know, you totally should. Not that you could do a company retreat or party anymore, but you know, give bonuses to your whole team, gift baskets, treat everybody, treat yourself. You totally should, but you should also put it back into the business because this is now your new baseline. You are now converting at 4% every single month, and you're bringing in 200 grand a month in revenue every single month. You can now afford to bump up your traffic. You can pay to bring, instead of 100,000 visitors a month, bring that up to 150,000 visitors a month. You plug that in, your 200 grand a month in revenue goes up to 300 grand a month in revenue every single month. So by focusing first on making the traffic that you have worth more, rather than trying to put all your money, all your resources into getting cheap or more traffic, make the traffic you already have worth more, then you can afford to buy more of it. So I ask you now, after going through this, to think to yourself, what are you going to do? What's it going to be? Are you going to keep doing the same old thing you've always been doing? Keep asking the experts and looking at best practices for the quick fix? Keep chasing this cheap traffic? Keep waiting 3, 4, 5 years before launching a new version of your website? How long can you keep doing that and getting the same results, especially now during these crazy times? Or are you willing to make a change? Are you willing to start focusing on your site's visitors, its data, its evolution? Tap into your inner detective. I know you've got one in there. If you can figure out who wrote Oliver Farr on my 6-year-old's wall, you can do your detective work, gather the qualitative and quantitative data, identify and prioritize the biggest issues on your site, and fix them. I hope I haven't left you feeling like you want to pull your hair out of your head or confused. If I have, we do have time for questions, or feel free to take a screenshot of my contact information and reach out to me after the webinar. So thank you. I'll turn it back over to Vaijanti now.
Yes, thank you so much, Teresa. That was a wonderful session. And thank you for emphasizing on the importance of combining qualitative and quantitative data for optimizing websites. And someone had to say this, quick fixes are not the solution. Thank you so much for saying that as well. You've left us with a lot of new ideas to test too. So we have a couple of questions. Okay. So where is the 5th type of buyer looking for offers or price slashes?
Offers are, okay, so the competitive buyer type who makes the quick decision, where are they looking for offers? That might be secondary. The first thing that the fast decision maker wants to know is, what do you sell? So they're not looking immediately for, I want discounts. They just want to know, they did their Google search, right? Let's say they're looking for flower pots. They want to, whether they're clicking on your ad or your organic result, they want to see flower pots. They want to come to your landing page and see, we sell flower pots, or you get your flower pot, not we, it should be you. You know, get your best flower pot here. So they're not immediately looking for the price, right? Discount. They just want to make sure that they're on the right site. That's all they want within the first few seconds.
Right. Okay. So we have another question. Do you think it's possible to have a website that resonates with all the buyer types you had mentioned? I think you answered this question already during the presentation. So you'd said it is possible to cover 3 buyer types in a page, right? If I'm right.
That example, you're right. That example did address 3 of them. It could have addressed 4. They should have had a section below the fold about who we are, and definitely some testimonials from people. So you can absolutely, and you should strive to address all 4 buyer types. You just have to prioritize which messages you are putting in which order on the page. So for the fast decision makers, you have to have what you do and why they should choose you above the fold, right? Immediately in the headline, subheadline, hero shot, or tagline logo area, answer what you do and why they should choose you. Then either lower down the page or on other pages of the site, you answer the questions for the slow decision makers, how your process works for the methodical, and who you are, and testimonials and reviews from your customers for the humanistic. So yes, you absolutely can and should address all 4 buyer types throughout the site, sometimes even on an individual landing page.
Okay, that's great. So there's another question. What's your thought on the age-old debate, CTA at top fold versus bottom fold? Have you come across a page where bottom CTA has worked better?
Oh, yes. Yes. Yeah. And that's just something, there's no blanket statement. There's no, I'm not going to tell you this always wins. That's the kind of thing that you have to do your detective work on and see how far down the page that, heat maps will show you how far down the page your users are scrolling on different devices and where they're interacting, where you're losing them. And then you test putting your call to action in different spots. Absolutely. That's a good question. And that's something where you have to figure out for your audience what the best answer is.
Right. So yeah, if you're in doubt, test it out.
Yes.
There's one more question. Changing the website design over time will affect SEO, right? So the efforts that we put previously will all be gone. So do you have questions for that?
Are they talking about a massive overhaul when you do the whole relaunch?
Yeah,
I'm not an SEO person anymore. That was 2008 when I was paying attention and staying current on SEO. So that'd be another topic for another person. But I mean, they do you do redirects, and I'm not going to touch SEO, to be honest.
Right. Okay. So okay, so German Torres says, excellent presentation, Teresa. I love it. We'll follow your recommendations.
Thank you.
We have another question. What are your thoughts about parallax scrolling? Does it affect the usability of your website?
If it's implemented well, no. It's something that users are used to, and it's in most cases attractive and modern. But again, I'm not going to say a blanket statement. You might have a certain audience that maybe there's a lot of issues, usability issues or adaptive issues that, again, you just need to make sure that it's displaying correctly on their browsers, devices, and it shouldn't be a problem, but I don't want to say it's never a problem.
Okay. So I'm just curious, you showed us a request quote form with 71% improvement. So that is actually mind-blowing. So in your experience, what has worked better, long form or shorter ones? I understand there is no one size fits all, but in general, what do you think works? So how do you choose those forms?
Yeah, I love forms, to be honest. I like it more than e-commerce and phone calls. I love that. I love the lead gen part. And we have seen all different things work when it comes to forms and the length of forms. It totally depends on what you're doing. I had a client that had a very long form and they needed it. They needed to qualify. They had a really good system on the back end that would kick out kind of the wrong people who were filling out the form and get rid of them, which was awesome. Just refer them elsewhere. And so they needed to keep their form long. And they had done quite a bit of testing before they brought me on board. And they had found ways of improving their form on mobile through A/B testing, and they were at a pretty good winning variation, but they could never beat their very long form on desktop, no matter what they did, trying to make it a multi-page, break it up. They could never get a winning variation from this long, kind of bad, clunky form. And so when we did form analytics on that one, we discovered the individual questions that were having high abandonment rates. And then we drilled in on those questions. So we would order them differently. We put some of those bad questions that they really needed. They needed to gather this information. We put it later in the form after the people had already filled out so much of it and were kind of engaged with this form and really wanted to see it through. Then they would get to those questions that were putting them off a little bit more. We did test making it multi-page and adding some like social proof and just some of those best practices back in. And sure enough, we were able to finally beat their desktop version. Sometimes for your business, you have to get all that information and you have to have a long form. So I'm not going to say you have to have a short form. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of case studies that show that the shorter the form, the better. And I absolutely agree not to gather information that you don't absolutely need. But if you do absolutely need all this information, then test multi-page form. You do a couple of them, or the wizard style form, where you ask a question and it kind of, then the screen advances to the next individual question, and it's a different kind of interactivity. So definitely test different ways of displaying that.
Right. Okay. Thank you. So we'll take a couple more questions.
Or like I said, take a screenshot of my contact information, especially as you go back to work and you're starting to implement some of this and you think, I wish I would have asked, or, you get hung up on something. Feel free to reach out to me. I love this stuff. So I love talking about it and, would love to answer any questions later.
That's great. Thank you so much, Teresa. So I think with this, we have come to the end of the webinar. Do we have any questions? No. Okay. Factors that determine the test duration.
Say that again.
What are the factors that determine the test duration?
Well, your traffic, of course, and the number of conversions, how much of an improvement you expect to see. There are even online calculators for determining how long your test should take. At one time, I know VWO had a test calculator. Vaijanti, does Zoho have a test duration calculator?
We are working on it right now.
Okay.
But we do have A/B testing, yeah.
Yeah, but so like determining in advance, how long should my test take? So it's pretty simple. When Zoho releases that, Vaijanti, make a big announcement, because it does help in planning, where if you just have these little calculators and you type in, all right, this is my traffic, this is the kind of improvement that I expect, etc., it will give you an estimate of how long your test should take. And obviously, if it gives you an answer, this test is going to take 9 months, that's not going to work, right? So those calculators are helpful.
Right. Okay. Thank you so much, Teresa. So when you said traffic also determines the test duration, so this has been a question in my mind for so long. Can low traffic website test as well?
They can do different types of testing. Like I said, if you determine that it's going to take 9 months to run an A/B test, don't do it. Do like what I said with the qualitative data. Okay. You're going to have to get to be more creative. You use your user testing, you do some polls, and you're going to have to use your judgment on that headline test that perfect your dream vacation versus your dream vacation customized by experts who know what the guidebooks don't or whatever. We asked enough questions and we analyzed the results from a lot of different ways that we all felt comfortable as a team. You know, my client, myself, my husband, our whole team together said, yeah, we feel confident that making this change will be an improvement. And it wasn't an improvement in anything we could quantify. It wasn't bounce rates. It wasn't filling out the form. It was just, there was an area that we identified as a little bit annoying to users, and we wanted to improve on it. And there was, sometimes you just have to use that qualitative data in order not only to find the problems, but also use that as your measurement of, yeah, we think we made an improvement. So for low traffic websites, that's the kind of measurement that I would recommend. I mean, there's also sequential testing, which is less than ideal, of course, where you say, you look at maybe Google Analytics and you say, in this month before we made the change, this is what our KPI numbers look like. And then the next month after we made the change, did our KPI improve? Mm-hmm. Sometimes that's all you've got. It's not ideal because things changed from this month to that month. This month was before the lockdown. This month is during the lockdown. This month was before Christmas. This was after. Seasonality affects your results.
Right.
But if you can minimize that, sometimes that's all you've got. And then if you combine that with your qualitative findings, you go with it. I mean, it's not a perfect world. You go with what you've got.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. I think that's about it.
Great.
Yeah. So if you have any more questions, please feel free to drop in messages to Teresa. She's on social media. Just take a screenshot of this, or I will send you her contact details and you can reach out to her directly as well. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. And thank you, Teresa, for the wonderful session.
Thank you for having me, Vajanti. And I really appreciate everybody, especially across the world where it's very late for you. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. My pleasure. Yeah. Bye.
Bye.